Hello and welcome to the Success Showcase. I'm your host Eric Lopkin with the Modern Observer Group, and with me as always is Chip Januszewski from the Happiness and Success GPS. Chip, how you doing this week?
Doing great. How about you, Eric?
Doing fantastic.
Spring is starting to spring here, so
It
looking
is,
for warm weather.
spring in New England is always a strange thing. So far in a week's time we've had, 20 degrees, 60 degrees. Now we've got very warm temperatures and a cold front backing it up. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's the March Lion Lamb syndrome. There you go.
Exactly. So, Chip, why don't you introduce our special guests this week?
Yeah, today we have a very special guest, the family Hayden. I met Bill Hayden a few years ago, and his son Christian actually started a business called Levo International a few years ago. And the story of how they started the company, what they're doing, who they're doing it for, is just fascinating. So, folks, when they give you your contact information now, I want you to help spread the word about it. But Christian, why don't you tell us exactly how you got from point A to point B, Northwest Catholic High School, to running this wonderful worldwide organization that you got going?
Yeah, sure. So, and thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. So Levo started with really my Eagle Scout project. I was looking for a project, a community project. So you have to, to reach the highest rank in Boy Scouts, you have to do an Eagle Scout project, which is, usually a community project. So building something for your local town or church or something like that. And so I was looking for a project that would be impactful and ideally international. I was looking for a cool project and stumbled upon simplified hydroponics. The guy who ran my Boy Scout troop had it in his backyard, and he had done it in the Dominican Republic. And so he taught me about it. He gave me some books, and I decided that my Eagle Scout project was gonna be a hydroponic greenhouse, a demonstration hydroponic greenhouse in Haiti. And so we drafted up the plans, got an organization that was going to support us in Haiti, was going to host the project. Boy Scouts ended up turning down the proposal. Understandably, didn't want to send a 16-year-old, sponsor a 16-year-old going down to Haiti. And so instead, the project became for my local high school, building a demonstration greenhouse. And then as an extension of that project, going down with my father and my brother on a trip to Haiti and building that demonstration greenhouse. When we were down there, we realized kind of the extreme need that existed, particularly in Haiti, in rural Haiti where we were working, but also the potential of simplified hydroponics, which is essentially hydroponics is farming without soil. It's a super efficient way to grow. It saves 90% of the water of traditional agriculture while increasing the yield and saving the space. And so in an area where you have to walk a far distance for your water and the soil quality is really poor, Haitian families and farmers could reap a lot of benefits from hydroponics. And so the three of us, my father and my brother, we really started from that initial project planning out how could we take this and provide a simple, affordable, and locally sourced as much as we can version of this system in Haiti. And so that's kind of where Levo was born, was this small scale, super simple approach to hydroponics. And then we built an organization that was really built around the foundations of partnership with local organizations who have been essential to the success of the organization. So whether you're talking about Haiti or here in the United States, you're talking about church groups, you're talking about volunteers, you're talking about organizations. We've built a really impressive, in a short period of time, network of partnerships, both in Haiti and the US, to support that work. But then we also focused on that individual family and maximizing empowerment for the family and the household rather than kind of that top-down approach. We built a bottom-up approach. And so from that initial project, we continue to break the system down even simpler and smaller, design that family unit called the Babylon system, and the Bokit system came later. And then when the pandemic began, we really switched gears, and not switch gears, I should say. We ramped up our domestic side of things when we saw the the needs that existed here domestically in Connecticut in particular, with the rising food insecurity. And so we began launching programs here in the US as well. So it's been about 6 years. We're going on this year is the 6th year that we've been in operation since that initial first project. And it's grown a lot since that initial family-based project. And so my brother is, went down for 2 months and worked to establish the protocols. He's a botanist at the University of Ohio, or the Ohio State University, I should say. And my father, he was an experienced nonprofit and business executive, and so he's helped guide the organization strategically and organizationally. While I would do things like speaking for the organization, but also building out the designs and expanding. But from that initial, the three of us, we have had countless volunteers. We're talking about young and old people supporting the organization in various capacities. We still are a majority volunteer-driven organization, and so those volunteers have been critical to the growth of the organization, as well as our partners who have been incredible. So that's Levo.
That's fantastic. How, when you were looking for a project for your Eagle Scout badge, what made you think of hydroponics? What brought that to your attention?
So it was really just luck. I mean, so this was 6 years ago, and it was hydroponics was even less of an industry, an agricultural industry then than it is today. It's gotten increasingly popular. Vertical farming is kind of something that a lot of people know about. But the guy, he had been doing this. There was a big push, I think, in the 80s. Like Epcot, for example, was one of the first major commercial hydroponic operations in Disney. And so he had learned from a bunch of Dominican friars in the Dominican Republic how to use this hydroponic system. And he had it just in his backyard, in like a hoop house in his backyard. And so he walked me through it one day, my junior year of high school, early in the year, like in the summer before junior year. And he was explaining, how the systems worked and the amount of production and the super efficiency of it, but also the simplicity of it. And, from that day, I was like, oh my goodness, why is this not everywhere? Right. Because you're all, I was constantly hearing about water issues and soil issues all around the world. And this didn't seem like a complicated thing. And PVC piping is available everywhere, right? Almost every country on the planet has plumbing of some sort, plumbing supplies. And so, I saw this as a huge opportunity that was really being underutilized. And so then Haiti was really he learned it in the Dominican Republic, and I knew that Haiti had a greater level of poverty and food insecurity. And so we chose Haiti versus the DR. But that's really, it was all kind of lucky instances that led to it.
That's really fantastic. I'm reminded, you keep saying it's simplified. And yes. I'm assuming, at least on some level, that's so the folks on the ground can keep everything running.
Yeah.
I do remember, I wish I could remember the organization, but we'd spoken to them a number of years ago. This was a group that had brought medical equipment to, places like Haiti, Dominican Republic, sub-Saharan Africa, only they found that they had a hard time keeping the equipment running because they could not train people to make the repairs necessary. What they did find was that most of these areas, people were very familiar with cars. And so they created new medical equipment based on car parts because they knew the people could fix those.
Yeah, it's actually, it's very similar to that. Christian, one of the things that Christian didn't really emphasize is how much his approach to innovation has been sort of the starting point for so much of the work we did. And one of the things that's interesting about that, and I always will talk about the fact that, this is a 15, 16-year-old high school student, right? So one of the things that we should recognize is that to make things happen, you don't have to have a particular degree or a set of experiences. You have to have, first and foremost, a commitment to making that impact, whatever that impact is. But one of the things that he was able to do, not being an engineer, not being a farmer, not having any exposure to that, one of the things he looked at was what's essential here, right? And then the design. When we say simplified, if you look at commercial hydroponics, it is more complex. There's a lot of control of all the various elements of the all the inputs, and so what Christian did in the initial design was to strip out anything that wasn't absolutely essential. And we sometimes forget about that when we think about innovation, think about creativity. We always think about we have to do something more complex, we have to do something more challenging. And in some cases, the innovation that's most powerful is the simplest, right? Stripping away the things that are not essential and only focusing on the essential. And that then can really leverage the local talent and the individual. The individual doesn't need a great deal of training from us. They're using their own experience.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, simplification and scarcity have long been a cornerstone of innovation. I know now people think about it, in technology, but think about, some of the biggest innovation we've had in our country go back to the NASA Apollo launches. Sure, the rockets were very technical, everything was, very complicated, but go to Apollo 13 and you had to save the astronauts' lives with whatever they had on board, and that's what pushed that innovation. So I think it was actually a big advantage for Christian not having that engineering background, not having the farming background, because he wasn't there going, well, we've always done it this way, so we can't do something different. He was able to see what was essential and really go forward with that.
No, they've come up.
Yeah, exactly.
Go ahead, Bill.
No, I was just saying that exactly, that stripping away the things that are complicated to see the essence of things is something that, it's a natural skill for a number of people. But I think I've found that young people have a tendency to be able to sort of get that general idea first and not make excuses to try to complicate it.
Yeah, I think obviously the older we get, the more set in our ways we are as far as that goes. But what you have done, Kristen, is simplify for people. But you're also out there educating people as to what's going on. You're getting communities involved in doing these things themselves. You're launching a CSA in Hartford coming up in a month or two. So tell us about everything that you got going on around here, as far as the different sites that you're doing things right now, what's already up, what's coming, and so on and so forth, and how we can help you out, most importantly.
And for those of our listeners that are not familiar, can you define what a CSA is?
Absolutely. Yeah. So Levo is we're a 501c3 corporation, which means that we're a nonprofit organization. But that said, what we think of that as a tax status, not a business model. And so what we've been working on for the last 6 years is to build an organization that's really a social enterprise, right? Where we can create sustainable development opportunities, but also sustainable economic models and sustainable approaches to community development and community strengthening. And so we look at that as, okay, we have these great tools, in particular hydroponic technology, and we have great partnerships and networks that we've built. And so what we've been doing for the last 2 years, particularly here in the States, is build up a great network of community partners, right? So that could be hospitals, that could be food pantries, churches, organizations, and businesses. And so we have a pretty densely networked, particularly in the city of Hartford, partnership network. And so what we're launching this year, combining that simplified hydroponics and that high efficiency but low cost and low work components, to create a network of urban growers in Hartford. A CSA is really, it's called community supported agriculture. And so basically the idea is that you're buying in, you're taking on some of the risk for a local farm. And so usually you buy a CSA share, and then you say you pay $500 up front, and then throughout the season you come each week and you pick up your produce from the farm. And so the idea being that you pay up front to support the farmer's upfront expenses, and then guaranteeing that income.
So it's similar to a farmer's co-op.
Same kind of concept. Yeah, co-op is another term that's commonly used to describe this. But the idea is that what we're combining is that kind of model where you're paying in order to get produce throughout the season. So you're helping us by covering some of that upfront cost that is involved in agriculture, right? De-risking it for us. We know that the customer is going to buy the produce once we produce the produce, right? Because we already have the money up front. And what that allows us to do is tailor the program more effectively so we can grow specific varieties. We know how much we need to produce. And we're combining that subscription with urban farming, and not just an urban farm, but small scale micro farming, micro growing, where you work with single to two family homes, right? Backyards in North Hartford, as well as community gardens, to create a pretty dense network of small scale farmers, which we will then provide at market access to. So we will pay them for their produce that we then feed into the CSA. The CSA pickups are in Hartford, but they're also in places like West Hartford, right? A wealthier market that is kind of denied urban growers, right? So urban growers are stuck usually with that urban market. And so in Hartford, for example, you may have the best tomatoes in the city or even are in the state, but you can't get access to the market. And so what we're aiming to do is kind of break those market barriers down and provide small scale farmers that competitive edge and that market access that they kind of consistently don't have access to. So micro scale farmers plus hydroponic technology, which allows them to spend less time, but create more value per square foot in their systems and create that sustainable farming practices that are so important these days. And then the CSA, so supporting getting wealthier communities, right? So exterior suburban and urban communities to support creating a sustainable food system within the city of Hartford. So it's a really exciting program. It's really the combination has never been, as far as we can tell, has never really been done before, right? Across the country. There's each component has, right? Household co-op based farming is not new, hydroponics is not new, and CSAs are not new, but in combination, this is really a new approach to urban farming and a new approach to getting local produce. And I think one of the things that is really telling is if you look at the produce in the store today and you look at all the gas shortages, right? The price of produce, everything is getting more expensive. And it's really been demonstrated that this food chain that we have is really unreliable, particularly in times of stress. And so what we're trying to build is a super sustainable local approach to agriculture. So if you're in the state of Connecticut, there's no reason you should be buying a tomato from Latin America if you've got tomatoes grown right here locally by people on the ground, right? So that's really the program that we're building.
Now, I've seen a number of farmers lately talking about the fact that the high fuel costs is also raising the cost of fertilizer, the nitrates, all of that. How does that affect hydroponics?
Well, so it does play a small role in our system cost, but what is really important about hydroponics is that it's so efficient, right? So it uses so little fertilizer that the amount of cost, even if the price of our fertilizer were to double, it's not ideal, we don't want it, but that's still a very small amount of operating cost. So we can still operate at much more effective rates than, say, a traditional farm that uses lots and lots of nitrate-based fertilizers. So even though we are still using fertilizer in our systems, it's such a small amount that even the cost rising, it doesn't really affect our bottom line as much.
So it's a much more efficient way of growing. Why do you think it hasn't taken off more than it has?
Well, in a lot of ways, it's a complicated question. There's a lot of different factors. Commercial hydroponics is a really expensive way of growing. And it's very capital intensive, right? Most of the time it's done inside. So you've got to power lights, you got to control the temperature. And so it becomes a very expensive way to grow. And particularly in the United States, where water is not yet properly priced, is what we say. So we still subsidize water for our agricultural sector. And so when water is not that expensive, hydroponics' value is less, particularly if you're talking about California tomatoes, right? Those are grown in massive fields where they dump tons of water at a very low cost. And so it's very hard for a hydroponic producer at scale to compete with that. So that's one of the factors here in the United States. It's increasingly popular around the world in arid regions. So the Middle East in particular, at Northern Africa, you have increasingly amounts of investment in hydroponic technology. I was just in Jordan in November doing some market research for our systems there, and they are increasingly adopting the technology because of their lack of water. So we will see in the next decade a lot of adoption of hydroponic technology as water scarcity becomes a bigger and bigger issue. But up until this to date, it has just not been a big enough issue that you've seen that investment in the new technology change from the current practice.
The pain point hasn't been high enough to get people to move in that direction.
Right, right. And simplified hydroponics has really just not been adopted, right, which is what we do. So it hasn't been used at scale. It's been used all over the world and tested out all over the world. But you talk about Haiti, we are one of the few hydroponic producers in the entire country, despite the fact that it kind of solves those two main pain points in Haiti: a lack of irrigation and a lack of quality arable land, right, soil. So it would be interesting to see, as this technology continues to be proven out as very effective as a solution, what that does, what countries, particularly in these water poor regions, do to adopt it.
I think a big part of it here too is just the general awareness, the education on this. I mean, until I met your dad, obviously it's natural that something like this would be going on, but I knew nothing about it. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there like me. And so you're getting out there and educating people, number one, as to what it is. And then number two, you know, if it's really expensive to do it commercially, the fact that you have your little units and whatever, and it's very inexpensive to do and for people to use and so on and so forth. To me, it's the awareness factor, just getting the word out that it's there is going to be huge. And, you know, I think obviously that's something that you're working on. And I think that's going to catch on more and more and more. So it all starts with awareness.
Now, also, given a lot of the difficulties that Haiti has had, they've got a lot of problems with the water that they do have being contaminated because of natural disasters, other problems. I would think that your simplified hydroponic system also creates a much safer food chain for them.
In a manner of speaking, it does. There's one of the things that it does, it's more about the soil than it is about the water, right? Because we're still going to use, one of the interesting things in Haiti is that there actually is enough water in terms of aquifer. There's an aquifer, but too few residents of that country have access to that aquifer through wells. So it's less about the quality of the water that we're putting into the system, than that we are putting less of it in so they can use that higher quality water from the wells, because they don't need to. If you're trying to pull from a well and you're doing it with 5-gallon pails, you're just not going to be able to do traditional agriculture. It just takes too much water. But in our systems, you can do that. And then the second thing is that it removes it from the soil, where a whole lot of soil-borne disease is spread. So you're minimizing those risks. So in terms of the production chain, you are minimizing the risk, but maybe not as much, or in the ways that you would think you would.
Excellent. So, again, where do you see this going down the road? Where would you like to take this?
Oh, that's a fun question right there. There's a lot of different directions. We're very excited about the potential of simplified hydroponics in the developing world, in water scarce regions, in kind of emergency situations, right? So hydroponics has the opportunity where you can set one of these systems up, and within a month, you're producing fresh produce right out of the system, right? And so if you imagine, and they're very inexpensive to set up, really easy to set up. And so if you imagine, for example, hurricane strikes the island of Haiti, right? So that could wipe out agriculture in that area that it got hit for potentially years. So what you would do is that you bring in, let's say, a month's worth of food supplies, but you also bring in hydroponic systems, right? And you set those up and you do some training. And then within a couple months, you have a permanent, right? Not just a short term, right, within a month, but a permanent source of produce and healthy and access to produce in that region. So we can use this as not only a short term disaster relief tool, but also a permanent source of fresh produce, vital produce, environmentally sustainable produce right in these communities that have been decimated. And so it's a very, very effective tool that we can use all around the world as we see these growing conflicts and growing levels of food insecurity all around the world. So that's a really exciting thing because we're kind of on the cutting edge of simplified hydroponics, right? So we're one of those few organizations that's starting to scale this technology, this simplified technology. So it's exciting, and we expect to continue to grow that impact. We're really scaling up our impact in Haiti. And so it creates an opportunity for us to be kind of the leading organization in this space, where large organizations can come to us, aid organizations can come to us to source hydroponics and programs. And so we're looking to build out that sector, and we're ramping up our work in Haiti to thousands of families in the next 18 months. And then here in the U.S., we're excited to and we expect to really continue to build out these more sustainable business models, right? So it's not just the sale of the technology like in Haiti or around, but it's actually the business models that we build around it. So the CSA subscription we see as this opportunity for us to not only provide access between, for example, Hartford and West Hartford and Avon and Simsbury, this channel of produce, but also connect Hartford entrepreneurs and Hartford business people and Hartford community members with the surrounding suburban and urban communities around Hartford, and then build that model, right, of this connection of both produce and products and opportunities and resources, but also copy that and scale that around. We're also, we're expanding in the education space and building systems for schools and doing training with schools. We'll be in Groton Public Schools this year. We're out on the eastern part of the state and expanding our educational programs at EastCon as well in Wyndham. So we're branching out in a lot of different ways, but I think the two major programs that we're most excited about is that simplified hydroponics in countries like Haiti that will have huge impacts around the world, but also here in the US, those business models that we're establishing around simplified hydroponics.
Yeah, I think that the best way to think about it is that with the work that we've been doing in particularly in Haiti and then particularly in Hartford, Connecticut, what we've done is we've over the last handful of years we've been testing all the various components, and what we've established is two templates that we can put in any community thereafter that fits those criteria. So either a developing economy or an under-resourced community in the United States or in a developed country. So we have these templates that we sort of drop into any community across, and what we think we can accomplish is having a networked community set of hyper-local community solutions, and that's the networked piece, right? There's plenty of hyper-local stuff going on nowadays, and there's plenty of sort of large-scale things being attempted, but the connection between the connection between hyper-local activities, resourcing those things, that's the thing that I think that we'll, over the long run, will be able to really generate. And that the community supported agriculture in Hartford is a sustainable model, right? It's a business model. It's not a handout. People are contributing to their own success. People are buying, we're providing a market for people to get the produce that they would buy anyway. Right, and they just do it locally, and you have all these other extra bottom lines. So that template, I think, is where it's headed from here.
That is fantastic. And we are just about at the end of our time. So if our listeners want to get more information, how can they find out more?
So our website is Levo, Levo International.org. And that's probably the best place to go. That's our website, levointernational.org. And you can also check us out on Instagram and Facebook. Our username is just Levo International.
Excellent. So thanks so much for being with us. Chip, what do you think is the big takeaway from this episode?
Well, I'm glad Christian brought up the website, because the website really has all the information about the technology, what they're doing, how to support them, what the plans are moving ahead. They take a look at their partners. There's a lot going on, and that's a great place to start. And then I highly recommend reaching out, to get involved. You can get involved, obviously, financial donations and volunteerism and so on and so forth. And, the big thing that Bill just brought up is template. And that's what I saw from this at the very beginning. I mean, obviously, if this is something that you're doing here and you can duplicate it all over the world, literally, it's making a huge difference. So God bless. Congratulations on what you folks are doing, and whatever we can do to help you out, we're here.
I concur. I think some of the big takeaways for me is, sometimes you don't need to make things complex. Go simple and see where it goes. And I think that's a big takeaway. And I love the education aspect. Let's get the word out so people know about some of the options that are out there. And thanks so much for being with us. You've been listening to the Success Showcase. You can catch us every week at xvadio.com/podcasts, as well as the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts. Remember, make this your best week ever and make next week even better. We'll see you then.